Hello everyone, today we'll be discussing about JavaScript optimization or JS optimization. For technical SEO experts, this would be a very important topic for discussion because let me tell you guys that SEO industry often thinks that JavaScript is the enemy of SEO, which is kind of a true up to a certain extent. The reason is because JavaScript is responsible for handling the functionalities of a campaign, and this includes a lot of loops while running code executions, and this can create a lot of issues with crawling, indexing and rendering. Now guys, crawling, indexing and rendering, these three are the very onset elements for starting any SEO journey. Trust me, if you have the most strongest SEO scores, if you have the most greatest technical SEO advantages, if you have millions of backlinks, if you have a good amount of brand presence or social presence, nothing is going to work unless you have a good crawling, indexing or rendering, because this determines if your campaign is really going to be indexed on search engines and people would be able to find that or not. Today we'll be discussing about 7 such common methods that can help you to optimize your JavaScript. Point number 1, you can utilize asynchronous JavaScript that you can do with the help of any plugin, or you can ask your developers. The concept is very simple. When a web page is loaded, your HTML, your CSS, your SVGs, your HTML5, these all can be loaded at the first instant because they takes lesser time. Your JavaScript can load at the end of your landing page because this is what named as asynchronous, which means that your landing page would load the JavaScript at the end. Point number 2 is lazy loading. So the thing is, but the only problem with lazy loading is that you can only use lazy loading for images and nothing else, but still that is one of the factor because this can push down all of the heavy loaded visuals towards the lower side of the page, and that can help to better render, crawl and index. Point number 3 is to make sure that your document objective module or DOM is properly optimized. In short guys, you can open GTmetrix and you can just scan your campaign. You can go into the waterfall tab and you can check how much every landing pages is consuming the highest bytes or highest like time to scan. So this is known as document object model, which means that the time required for any particular document for an entire landing page required to get loaded or get rendered or get indexed in a particular transition state. So this can be optimized by reducing the sizes of some of your landing pages or elements. This can be also reconsidered if you really optimize the page with the best of the guidelines, such as keeping the content very precise, avoiding iframes or avoiding any kind of no script tags and things like that. Point number 4, try to avoid iframes as much as possible. A very simple reason, iframe can really differ a lot, and that can really that can kind of be a devastating factor for your SEO campaign. Point number 5, minify JS. Like you can do a minification of JS. That is a very famous work that can be easily handled by some of the well-known plugins like WP Rockets or things like there is even more like Pixel Optimizer or such things like that. But the thing is, minification of JavaScript simply means that you can place all of the JavaScript at the same line, because this can reduce, once again, this can reduce the document objective model, and this can reduce the page length. Point number 5, deferring of JavaScript. Deferring of JavaScript simply means that whenever a page is loaded, the JavaScript should be the most end execution point of a thing. So this is somewhat similar to asynchronous JavaScript loading, but the only difference is that pushing JavaScript as down as possible. Sometimes asynchronous does that. Sometimes asynchronous loads once a page is crawled till the end, but in the case of defer, it would be pushed towards the very bottom of a particular page up to the very best limit, and this can be one of the best practices for optimization. A best plugin I would advise is WP Rocket. Once again, if you're not using a WordPress CMS, then you can ask your developers to defer the JavaScript. That can be very easily done by any of your developers' help. Point number 6, JavaScript can be well optimized by making sure that none of the external and internal files are looped into each other, which means that if you are calling any external sources from the internal, so don't do that. Make sure that all the loop executions are running simultaneously and every loops, because the main concept of JavaScript is loop running, and JavaScript should be the loop should be running at equally spaced, either keep them internal or keep them external. Server side rendering. So the thing is, we have already made a video on rendering which I'll put in the description, but the thing is, if you make sure that your server side rendering is enabled for your website, which means that if you disable JavaScript and your site is still loading, that can be a good advantage for your JavaScript optimization. Whenever you are working with a JavaScript file, try to make sure if you can use Angular or Node.js, because Angular and Node.js tend to like the chances of getting it better crawling and indexing is greatly enhanced if you use an Angular or Node.js rather than just any of the typical JS. Thanks for watching.